La 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 loo, loo, doo, doo, doo. Hi, Brandon with Spaghetti and Meatballs. Today we are joined by Weird City Games. They have a Kickstarter right now. Why don't you tell us who you are and what's going on?
My name is Tim Eisner.
I'm Ryan Swisher.
And we're the designers of March of the Ants. It's a game we released on Kickstarter 2 years ago, and we are now on Kickstarter again with an expansion, Minions of the Meadow.
All right. So what prompted you to do March of the Ants in the first place?
I originally got into board game design. I decided it was something I wanted to pursue more enthusiastically and dedicate more time to. And Ryan's a good friend of mine, and I was trying to get him involved in a game with me because I was like, it'd be better to have a collaborator. And so he had done an art show about ants about 10 or 12 years ago and drawn a bunch of awesome pieces and researched ants. And so I was like, what about an ant game?
Mm-hmm. It was literally a illustrated novel about an ant who gets a sense of free will and decides she's going to leave her colony and find a political structure she agrees with. And all of the species she interacts with are based on nature. So she finds these slaver ants, but she doesn't like what's going on there. She meets these ants that kind of seem like this euphoria cult, but they're actually infected by cordyceps fungus.
Wow.
So in the end, she kind of makes this realization about what she's capable of. But we had all of this artwork. So, Anna had this passion like everything I had learned about ants. One thing I'd read once was that they have a culture that's equivalent to, I think, pre-Bronze Age. They're herding aphids. They're literally sometimes creating tools and can have like massive agriculture. So it seemed like the perfect theme for a board game when Tim was ready to make one.
So yeah, we started, thinking about it, talking about it, and then a big inspiration came after we started getting into playing Eclipse a bit, and we really enjoyed that game, but it usually takes, 4 or 5 hours to play, and so we'd get together with friends, and we sometimes wouldn't even have time to finish it. People would be like, okay, I got to work in the morning, or something came up with their kids or something, and so they'd have to go home, and so we wanted to encapsulate some of that gameplay, some of that 4X and strategy, but make it a game that could play quicker and would be also more approachable to a wider audience.
Okay. And so are you both ant enthusiasts, or is it just...
I'm ant enthusiast by way of Ryan.
Okay.
It's infectious.
He spread it to me by talking to him about all the ant species he'd learned about. I was like, oh, those are really cool. I want to know more about those.
Right.
So,
and where did the artwork come from then?
So the artwork, when we started, I had about 14 pieces that I had made for this original art show, and they were done in such a large format that we were also kind of almost like in a Ken Burns style, cut and crop out different scenes and pieces out of those larger pieces.
Okay.
So if you've played the game, we have the event cards. Those show the different ants doing things. All of that artwork came from that art show, The Ant and the Moon.
Very cool.
And then we created all new artwork for the evolutions and the colony goals, and I was the principal artist for that. So I did all the line work, I did all the coloring. Tim, who has this kind of really fascinating sense of like pattern and geometry, got into some of the artwork, did some designs that are in the colony goals. But all of the artwork actually kind of started with us. And then now for our expansion, we're working with a local illustrator who's doing these just like fantastic line drawings that I'm still getting to color with the digital media.
Okay, very cool. So you did this, how long ago? The original March of the Ants?
the original March of the Ants came out on Kickstarter 2 years ago, and it was published a year ago. So.
Okay. All right, and you sold through all of your copies,
Pretty
right?
quickly.
Yeah, pretty quickly. We should have printed more, but we printed about 1,000 or 1,200 copies for retail and sold out those in about 7 months. So
Very cool. No, and it is a great game. I've told both of you. For those of you who have not played this, Trina and I played it at GameStorm, and the instruction manual wasn't in there, but even without the instruction manual, we were able to use just the pieces and the information on the board to get about 95% there on how to play it. Mm-hmm. And it was an enjoyable experience, and then we went to turn it in, like, oh, we found it! We have the manual! It's okay, we're good, we're fine. So
that is awesome to hear. That's actually one of our goals in making games. We wanted to make games that we like as sort of more heavy gamers, but you could also play with partners who weren't into gaming as much, or teach new friends who weren't, like as heavy gamers, to get more people involved with gaming without being, super just simple filler games. And so part of that, like on the nest mat, we included all the rules that you need to play, an overview of the turn and the rounds, and tried to make it just as sort of accessible as possible, so that's really great feedback to hear.
Yeah, no, excellent. So what brought you to then doing an expansion?
Well, the first game was put up on Kickstarter, we still had a ton of other ideas that we wanted to do. We had talked about it. The world of ants is enormous, and so there was all these other ideas we wanted to include, and so even from the time we launched the base game, we knew that there was a lot of potential for an expansion, and so partly it was we saw the demand that we'd sold out of the base game and we wanted to have more copies of that available, and so we were planning on doing a print run of that as well. So we said, well, if we just do an expansion at the same time, it can help sort of build momentum for both together.
Yeah.
There's also, there were just some specific kind of game actions that we wanted to bring into the game. One was the idea of major workers, those soldier ants that exist in colonies. In the original Kickstarter, there was this really vibrant conversation about ant-shaped meeples. To really immerse yourself in that realm of the ants, people wanted little pieces that are shaped like ants.
Yeah.
So from game, really at the beginning of this, we kind of joked about it as the meeple expansion, because we wanted to finally bring ant-shaped meeples to the peoples. So making sure too that that's a real integral part of the expansion. People love evolving their complete ant, where they're like, I made this super ant with a head and a thorax and abdomen, it's unique. But in the game, you only got 3 points for doing that. It didn't reward you as much as it felt satisfying. But with these major workers, as you evolve each of those body parts, they gain new abilities. So it adds a complexity and richness that I really enjoy.
Very cool. So, go ahead.
Oh, another thing that in the expansion that we sort of knew we wanted to put in that people had talked about wanting in the base game was aphids and aphid herding. It's one of the most fascinating things that ants do is they take care of these aphids. Sometimes even when they overwinter, they'll take some of the aphids back to their nest and then bring them back out in the spring to start a new population.
Interesting.
And they have this symbiotic relationship with them. And so we decided that would be sort of a main thing that wasn't, we didn't want to paste that on to the base game. We wanted to make it its own thing that added in. So we've got the aphids that ants can farm and find in some of the hexes, and they have to move those around, protect them, move them to greener pastures in the meadow.
Gotcha. So for those who may not know about the game, who have never played it, how would you briefly describe March of the Ants and then describe the expansion? Go into that.
Awesome. Well, March of the Ants is a open-ended strategy game. It's each player is controlling an ant colony, and you're exploring out into the meadow. So the players build the shared board as they play, and they each are sort of managing their own nest's resources of larvae and food, and then also building up their ant body within their nest. And so it's like a civilization game, sort of, where you're building a civilization, but it's an ant colony instead of like a human civilization or a space empire.
Right. Well, and one of the things I liked is there are different avenues to accomplish different goals. So you're not just like whoever has the most interesting ant or whoever has the most this or that. You have multiple things that you're trying to do in order to achieve other goals.
And that was sort of a raging debate for us as designers. I think we kind of came at it with different play styles. I'm a little bit more I like to tinker and build these systems. And Tim, though he's the friendliest guy, is a little bit more aggressive as an ant and likes to crush those systems. So this balance, of him wanting battle to be effective and be able to smite ants, and me wanting to be able to kind of run away and rebuild off to the side. Yeah. So because of that tension, I think it really allows players in this game to approach those different avenues. But you need to have a little bit of both, I think, to win.
So yeah, I definitely, that was a goal and something we really worked on in the design phase, was to have multiple paths to victory, where it's sometimes you can just have a tiny colony that's just really focused on evolving and you just have a highly evolved species. Sometimes you're really expansive and warlike. Other times you build symbiotic relationships. And so I think that really lends itself to replayability and just a lot of room to explore in the game and find different paths.
No, definitely. When we were at GameStorm, like I said, we played it, but when we go to GameStorm, we're always there to play as many games as we can.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so we did play 2 rounds of this, really kind of short, figuring it out, and then it was I need to keep this game.
Right, totally.
I need to keep playing this.
Every one of the cards is unique. I think that we all kind of have a heritage and history in Magic the Gathering, so we love those player interactions. So your first couple games, you're learning the cards, you're learning what kind of interactions you can put together, and by your second or third game, you start to build these combos, and that's when you build a really terrifying ant.
Yeah, and which Tarina did, because she's really good at that stuff. So the expansion, what should people know about the expansion and where can they find information about it?
The main place to find information about it is our Kickstarter page, which is live now. It'll be on until June 2nd. And so that's if you just look for March of the Ants or Minions of the Meadow on Kickstarter, you can find that, or at weirdcitygames.com. But more importantly, in the expansion, you can find the major workers, as Ryan described earlier, these larger ants. Each colony has 2 of them that they can build, and they're really effective for sort of amplifying your strategies. The different strategies that are open, they can, depending on how you're focused, they can really boost that strategy.
And you have multiple colors, is that for
One
the amount
for
of
each player.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a set of 2 per each player. That's the limit right now that you can build. And they're an investment to get out there, but they can really pay off throughout the game and can really be used pretty effectively. As well, there's also the aphids, which we've covered a bit. So that's something that comes in through the new hexes. There's some new starting hexes that you'll find when you start exploring the meadow, and you will farm those.
And then there's was the mother centipede. What was it?
We're bringing in 2 predators. So in the original game, we have these cool centimeeples. It's a green meeple. Some people wanted centipedes to be more terrifying. So what the brood mother does, she gets more powerful as the rounds progress, but she also allows centipedes to reveal additional cards for power. So she makes centipedes bigger. She's kind of an aggressive option you can summon to shut down other players. And then there's a trapdoor spider, which is more of like a resource denial. So when it goes
That's
into
really
a hex,
cool. I really liked that when you were talking about it to me earlier.
yeah, so I mean, a lot of players, not everyone likes to have conflict by directly battling another player. They'd rather set up scenarios that the other player has to play through. So these add some tools to your tool chest.
Another exciting thing is one of our stretch goals that we recently unlocked was a new predator that backers of our campaign helped design. One thing in our Kickstarter campaign, we want to involve backers as much as possible to give their input, and so we did some voting on what predators they wanted to see, and Ladybug came in, so that's going to be sort of a terror that goes after the aphid farms.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing, I mean, I'll get close-ups of this for everybody, but is this going to be? There's for the spider. There's a symbol cut into it. Is that going to be final? Or?
So we're still talking with our manufacturer about that and figuring out the best option. This will hopefully either have that symbol cut through there or potentially silkscreened on there. We're not quite sure the final, we got to figure out the manufacturing process on that a little bit more.
Gotcha. And then the blue cubes?
These are just the ants. I just have these out to
Okay.
show carrying the aphids and the size of them compared to the other larger things. Additionally, in the expansion, there are parasitic evolutions, which you play onto other players' nests. So there's a way that you can have a little more player interaction. If somebody's got a really strong ant they've built that's really super aggressive,
They built up that terrifying combo.
then you can play a parasitic evolution. You block one of their evolutions that they have in play, and it also puts a negative on them.
Yeah.
So it sort of incentivizes other people to go after them in battle, or increases the card cost for them, does different things that will push them, that makes them readjust their strategy, so people can't just be like, okay, I've got my thing set, I'm good, you can't touch me. There's more ways to interact and to push other players.
Gotcha. And then what are these other cards here?
These are some of the cards that summon these predators, like the broodmother centipede or the trapdoor spider. So one is a colony goal, so you kind of throw in your favor with the broodmother. So as long as the broodmother is succeeding, you're getting points. Also in the base game, there was a head evolution that let you sort of team up with the centipedes. What's cool about these parasites, somebody set up this perfect centipede team. You remove that traitor's head, and then all of a sudden they're having to battle those centipedes again. Right. So a lot of these cards just kind of set up those cool relationships with the centipedes, which I think are fun.
And the other ones, there's sort of always been, even before the ladybug, there was some interaction between the aphids and the predators. They're part of what drew the greater predators to the meadow. So a lot of these cards that summon predators will also bring more aphids in or help people move aphids around. And so there's a little bit of dynamicism and interaction between the predators and the aphids.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then other cards we have a whole evolution body that deals with aphids. One for every aphid in the hex, you get to discard additional cards. So if there's aphids present, you're a really great battling ant. We have one that's nectar hunting. If there's aphids, you get to move your ants directly to those hexes. So that's almost as good as flying, which is pretty nice,
Yeah.
and it's really cheap. So you can get that one on early. And then there's one, every ant that's herding an aphid is fed, so they can immediately kind of nourish themselves
nice.
on the dew.
Very
So those are really powerful, just aphid-themed evolutions that players have really enjoyed getting to play with. Do you want to talk about the flip side, those parasites? We got those. Or I'm
So
sorry,
tactics, yeah. So the tactics are another cool new card types they're found in all three of the card types in evolutions, events, and colony goals, and they do not have a cost. You don't pay with them for them with ants or larvae as you normally do. They're only playable in battle, and so normally in battle in March of the Ants, each player can play a card face down to add ferocity to their army strength. These cards will add the ferocity, but then they'll also add a temporary effect, a little boost. So Camouflage Head lets you take 2 ant steps right away. So you can either run some more ants in to get reinforcements, or if you're feeling like you're going to get beat in that battle, you could just run out and save those ants.
So little combat tricks to make battle more interesting.
Yeah.
So that's similar to some, I don't know if you played Blood Rage, there's also there's those battle cards in
I've
there.
only seen the memes.
Yeah, seen the memes. Yeah. People are nuts about that. These have a pretty similar sort of effect of that they, instead of just adding a modifier, a boost, they give a special combat trick.
And what he mentioned, these don't have a cost, so the only way to get them to play is to play them during battle. And if you win, you get to keep it as a permanent effect, these evolutions.
Nice.
So I mentioned earlier, I'm the kind of player that doesn't like battle. I like to run away. These give me a real incentive to want to stick around. Like that twist. Maybe I can kind of be sly and sneaky and win, and then it's worthwhile for me to stick around and fight because I get these cool effects. There's nothing more satisfying. I mentioned you get that bonus when you build a complete ant. If after worker phase it's impossible to play any more evolutions, you finally get your 3rd one down in soldier phase, get your 3 points for the win. Like, there's nothing more exhilarating. So for someone who normally doesn't like battle, like all of a sudden I have that to look forward to.
Yeah, that's great.
One other thing that in the expansion that's pretty awesome is there's a new sort of solo game and co-op rules. In the base game, it's 1 to 5. We have a solo game and co-op that people have been really excited about, where the centipedes are invading the meadow. So they're coming in. You're trying to defend the Great Tunnel and mobilize to fight them off. This is the 2nd chapter in that, where you're hunting down the centipede broodmother and trying to exterminate the centipede threat for good. And so you're going to be building up your colony's resources, strengthening your ants, and exploring out, trying to find the centipede broodmother in time before she regains her strength.
Yeah, no, that's great, because that's something I'm finding more and more is that people want a solo version of whatever game it is, because people want to play all the time, and you can't always get a group together, and maybe you have free time and your 4 other friends don't, but you don't want to let that stop you.
Definitely, definitely.
And what's cool, it uses all the same rules. You're using the score track, you're using point scoring in the same way. In the base game, there's just a little centipede icon. So you separate all those centipede icon cards. That removes all the cards that have like complex player interactions. And what you're left with is the deck that works perfect for a solo game, and then a centipede deck that's used to determine the centipede actions. So we still kind of use the whole buffalo. There's no wasted parts. And for someone who just wants to practice and really like find those cool combos of card interactions, they can still have a meaningful experience playing solo.
Very cool. All right, and so Kickstarter's live now in June 2nd.
Yep.
Where are you right now? How are things looking?
They're looking excellent. They're great. We actually I woke up this morning and we were at 300% of our funding goal.
Whoa!
So,
Nice.
Yeah, we were trying to raise 12,000, and we're at a little over 36,000. So
All right.
we've got another 2 weeks or so left. So we're pretty confident we're going to keep rising, meet some more stretch goals.
And it was really fun from I'm proud to say we funded day 1. So from day 1, we got to talk about like stretch goals, and because of our community, like what we're getting to add beyond what we'd hoped to add. So it's exciting. Thank you.
Another thing that's awesome about that is that, we had close to a little over 1,600 backers for the base game for our first Kickstarter. And, we have at least like 700 or so that have come back already that are,
Great.
that have purchased again. So they've played it before and they're coming back to, so it's just a great show of confidence that they've enjoyed the game. They want more. And so we figured people wanted more of the March of the Ants, and so it's great to see that response.
So you mentioned the possible Ladybug third predator. Yep. What are some other stretch goals that you've unlocked?
So another stretch goal is we've nicknamed it Eve of the Antperium. It's inspired by some of those more the bigger 4X space games, and there's a different starting hex in the middle, and everyone starts a little bit removed from it. So you have a little more time to build up your army, and then there's an incentive to get into the center meadow and to control that, because that's worth a lot of points. And so it's a little bit more of a battle-oriented game where people are starting here and then building inwards.
But it's also kind of more structured. Like, one thing that can sometimes happen in a regular March of the Ants game is someone puts their starting hex right next to yours, and they start trying to battle you from the very beginning. With this setup, all of the hexes are placed in designated locations from the very beginning, so players start at specific distances from each other. So you kind of know exactly how much time you have to get your economy going before you're going to confront other players.
Right.
So you know the battle is coming, but it almost gives you a chance to plan for it more.
Nice.
Another thing that we've just recently unlocked, actually at 36,000 was our most recent stretch goal, is season cards, which are, they have sort of a board effect each round. So the game is played over 4 rounds, and each round you'll reveal one of those at random, and they'll have an effect that, like, all evolutions cost less, so everybody is evolving a bit more and getting super evolved ants that turn, or it incentivizes battle in a certain round, and so they're just a fun variant that can add a little bit more depth and texture into the game.
Excellent. And it's only 55 for the base game
and the expansion.
And the expansion. Like, how can I ask how you were able to do that?
Well, partly we are just really thankful for our Kickstarter backers, and so we did as much as we could to, streamline the process and to get it as reduced as possible, and so partly finding good manufacturing partners and building up those relationships.
I think he literally got 5 quotes.
Yeah.
For the base game. So, I mean, it pays to shop around.
Yeah. So, if you have it, you know that it's really good quality. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. All of the pieces are very quality. There's a lot included in there. I'll do some close-ups so that people can see. But yeah, I mean, I've seen similar games for $20 to $30 more.
Mm-hmm. That was another thing sort of on our trying to make it accessible and just get more people to play it, as we wanted, we thought, okay, we could make the box a little bit bigger and charge 50 or 55 for the base game alone, but we're like, what, we want people to play this, we want them to get it, we want it to be accessible, and so we're in this to get people to play our game, not to make a bunch of money, obviously, right. And so we tried to just sort of make it so it's feasible to produce it, and so we could keep designing games, but not, jack up the price a lot.
Yeah, well, no, it's just great value, like great pieces, great gameplay, great price.
Thank you. We're really
awesome. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's everything. As far as this goes, are there other projects people should look out for from you in the future?
We've got a couple other games in the works. This is our main focus now, so it's like in the middle of the Kickstarter, it's hard to think about anything else,
Right,
but
yeah.
We definitely have some other things going on. I have another game, Little Pig, that I designed that I'm working on maybe getting Kickstarter up this fall, or potentially seeing if some other publishers wanted to pick that up just to explore that route of seeing if they can, get it to a larger audience. Ryan's got a game called Space Miner.
Yeah, I kind of imagine it. It's like a cross between Carcassonne and Yahtzee.
Okay.
So, yeah, you're dice rolling to take actions and flipping hexes in space to try to match them up, similar to Carcassonne. But, one of the things, we got the 3D printer with some of our March of the Ants money. So it's been fun to get to just make different shapes. In that game, you construct little ships together, so we have interlocking pieces.
Oh, wow.
So it's just been something to kind of play around with. Having a color printer. Our other good friend who we design with has made a cool thing, Dungeon Hustle. So you're sliding around, flipping tiles. We have a lot of fun little games. We've been pretty much 100% focused on this.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to dusting those off again soon. And maybe I hope you get to see those.
Yeah, no, excellent. Thank you both for joining me. So Weird City Games, I'm going to put links to everything I can possibly find for you guys in the description below. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you, Brandon.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you later.
I think those are the kind of cool fringe games people love. Like, there's somebody out there who's like, why haven't they made a game about cilantro?
This program is part of the Pathological Nerdcasters Network. Find more at pncn.rocks, where all the geeks come to play.